From the 2017 Western Governors Association Winter Meetings in Phoenix, Arizona, I'm Chris Berry with Jim Ogsbury, the Executive Director of the Western Governors Association. Jim, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Excited to be here.
Great. Well, I'd like to jump right in here. Now, we know that the Western Governors Association was founded to help kind of tackle the unique ideas that Western governors are facing today. Obviously, the organization's been around for a long time, but in your opinion, what's the kind of biggest, uniquely Western issue that's facing these governors right now?
That's a great question, and they've got their hands in everything, right? So they've got anything having to do with resources, energy, water, even workforce development, management of public lands, forestry and wildfire. But I think the project they're working on now that has the most potential for a long-term legacy and to make a real difference is their effort to realign the state-federal relationship. And it is a concentrated effort. They adopted a resolution strengthening the state-federal relationship that presents their vision of a more functional relationship with the federal government and kind of presents a roadmap of how to realize that vision.
So when you bring together a group of governors, as you are here in Phoenix right now, you've got Republicans, you've got Democrats who come together. I imagine it's a lot different than what we see on Capitol Hill, where you kind of have the two sides up against each other.
It's unbelievable. It is the signature characteristic of WGA is a fierce commitment to bipartisanship. You come to our meeting, you don't know who's red, who's blue. These governors are so cooperative. They're so collegial. They've used these WGA meetings to get to know one another on a very personal basis. They have much more in common than they have separating them. And it's almost magical. And you're exactly right. It's completely unlike the vitriolic, poisonous atmosphere in Washington.
So you say, all right, they've got similar needs, basically, as they deal with the federal government. They do have a little bit of diversity, but you're right, they're all from the West. They all have these same similar needs. So what kind of policy things will you be talking about specifically that you can address and say, hey, this is where we are kind of united the way we stand?
Sure, you bet. Well, they'll take on a number of policy resolutions and announce their adoption at the winter meeting. We've got panels on things like autonomous vehicles, which is, and obviously Arizona is a hotbed for testing those vehicles. We're looking at the changing face of the West. We have a panel on Western demographics. We've got discussions on a historical view of the state-federal relationship, particularly as that impacts Western states. We've also got we're going to have discussions on workforce development. John Ratzenberger, better known as Cliff Clavin from Cheers, is a big advocate of American manufacturing, and he'll be giving a dinner address for the governors as well.
That's terrific. So, when I think of the federal government, obviously the federal government is made up of legislative branch, the executive branch, a lot of the things that sort of the mandates that the states have come down from that executive branch. So how are these governors reacting a year into the Trump administration?
So I think that they recognize that a presidential transition really provides an opportunity to go in and realign that relationship between the states and the feds. And so they're pushing in that space very, very aggressively. They're taking advantage of the administration's call for regulatory reform to offer very specific recommendations as to how to improve that relationship. A lot of it has to do with how the feds consult with states and with governors. And the governor's vision is that they would be called upon to operate as full and equal partners in the development and execution of federal policy, particularly to the extent that policy impacts state authority and affects their constituents.
So I would imagine the Western Governors Association reaches all the way to Hawaii, but how far to the east do you come?
So the eastern edge is the Dakotas down to Texas, and everything west of that. So it's 19 western states and 3 Pacific territories.
So I would imagine border issues, both Canada and Mexico, are very important too.
Yeah, we've been talking a little bit more about trade in recent months, and We will have the premier of Saskatchewan, Brad Wall. He's going to join the 12 governors at the meeting this weekend.
So you get these governors together, and most of them, I mean, do they know each other? Do they interact? Obviously, you know the guy that's next door to you, but do you know the guy 3 doors down?
Yeah, I think because of WGA, largely they've gotten to know each other very well. It is, like I said, just such a collegial group. And honestly, I think part of it is there's something different in the West, right? They're a little more down to earth. It's a little easier to. They're more accessible, I think, and certainly enjoy mixing it up with the attendees and the sponsors and the folks who'll be out at our meeting.
Do you think maybe they're a little bit more mavericks too, and kind of go out on their own sometimes?
Yeah, I think there is a certain level of independence. I think our governors are by and large not real ideologues. They're really super pragmatic. I think that governors are really kind of a different breed of cat, right? Because they have to manage their states. They're the CEO of their states. They have to make things work. They have to compromise. They have to reach across the aisle. And they're very, very practical, and they really use these forums to learn from each other too. Like they will have heard something that happened in a neighboring state and want to learn how that governor dealt with that issue, and because we're all facing common challenges.
So again, I'm with Jim Ogsbury from he's executive director of the Western Governors Association. I would imagine, I know you live in Denver, you probably have the opportunity to visit all of these Western states on a regular basis. So just kind of a quick question here for you. If you were talking to somebody and you said, hey, where should I go in the West? Where would you, what's sort of like on your bucket list where you definitely would either want to go on vacation or just, it's a lot of fun to go there?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I've been to all the states in the West, and I knocked off my 50th state about a year ago, and that was Alaska, and that is absolutely extraordinary. But if you haven't been to Hawaii, our summer meeting will be in Hawaii in 2019. Governor Ige is our vice chair. He'll be chair in 2019, and that's a pretty special place as well. But they're all special. I mean, there's nothing like the West. The landscapes, the national parks, just the people. It's just a very special corner of the world.
You're an interesting guy. You're involved not only with the states, but we talked a little bit about the travel that you've made and things like that. iHeartRadio. It's all about sound. What do you listen to when you're out, with either on the radio or listen to your iPads? Any particular kind of music or news and information?
So I'm a radio guy through and through. So basically, what I do is when I'm on the road, I start at one end of the radio and I just move all the way to the other end, and then I start all over again.
That's great. Yeah, there's a lot of things out there. Well, really, I'd like to thank you again for speaking with us today, Jim. This is Jim Ogsbury. He is the executive director of the Western Governors Association. We look forward to learning more about what the governors talk about in their conference here in Phoenix this week, and I hope that you'll listen to some of the other podcasts that we have here on iHeartRadio.
Thank you, Chris.